Well, in endgames, there are many stories which can happen, many things which can go wrong, and in my game against Riazantsev on this diagram, it might not yet be completely obvious that things have gone wrong for black. In fact, I was pretty optimistic in this game. I thought I have some strong pawns on the queen side, knight on d3, and the bishop, which will be strong in some future after e5. But when we came closer to this position, I realized that my opponent's concept of bringing his knight to b7 was in fact unusually strong, because you see here, if I would take knight c1, after king c1, now white's rook would be able to go to d7, and also if white is allowed to play something like e5, knight c5, knight e4, the black's weaknesses would be telling, and in fact I could find no way to prevent the rook d7 with some serious consequences. Of course, black's position might still be defendable here, but I somehow thought it was so passive and so without prospects that I decided that anything else was better than this. Tried knight f2, and after rook d7, it turns out that the bishop is almost out of reasonable squares. I go bishop b6, I have no other squares, and he goes rook d6. Now it seems that the black strategy is completely refuted, and that white is winning a pawn. Either e6 is hanging, b6 is hanging, and it is not so easy to do anything. But in fact, the ability to find defensive resources in endgames belongs to the most important abilities in chess, and especially here, if you take a close look at the position, you should see that, in fact, despite material losses, black has some positive features in the position as well, as being that the white king on b1 and the knight on c1 are in fact badly equipped to fight against any possible aggression along the d-file, and that if once the black rook should appear on the back rank, then connected with bishop e3, knight d3 or knight e4, black will have serious threats. So it is imperative to activate the rook. So I remove my bishop to the most active position, bishop e3, rook e6. Now white is pawn up, and this is also a very healthy pawn chain. Difficult to do something against it, but we mentioned that once black manages to activate the rook, and the position will become unclear, because the threat of penetrating the first rank is very, very serious. So I go rook a7. So if knight would go somewhere, to, let's say, to a5, now already the move like rook d7 with an idea rook d1 could be almost decisive. So I should also pay close attention to what is going on. But my opponent, he was playing very carefully, played knight d6. Now you see white is closing the d-file, and it seems that still there is no way to activate the rook properly, and that black is just pawn down and without any chances. But still, if you have a plan, it is better to follow this plan, even if it is not so easy to achieve. So in this case, here the black has to activate his rook, has to do it at any cost. So he goes rook d7, e5, and bishop c5. And now, amazingly enough, although white's knight is defended, he has no way of retaining his advantage, because, of course, if knight would go somewhere, for instance, knight e8 is already very bad because of rook d1, and I create very strong threats, and otherwise it is difficult for him to protect his material belongings, and he had to go knight e2, and after bishop d6, you see he takes d6, king f7, knight d4, keeps material, but only for a very short while, because now I can go knight d3, c5, and I pick up the pawn on d6. So white cannot keep his advantage, he still goes rook d6. rook d6, e d6, king f7, and now you see for a knight ending, black's king is more active than the white, and in fact it is white who has now to pay some attention in order not to drift into slightly worse position. So white goes knight d4, and after white wins the pawn on h7, black wins his pawn back, and the resulting knight ending is absolutely equal, and the players agreed to a draw here. So you see in endgames which look slightly passive, like after knight c1, rook king c1, it might be very useful to ask yourself whether there are any more active alternatives, whether it is possible to create counterplay, and whether it is possible to activate all your pieces. And in this particular case, I'm pretty sure that after a knight c1, king c1, black would be facing long and very difficult defense. For instance, after e5, rook d7, and here bishop b6, white can even consider creating a passed pawn with f5 and support it with knight d6. You see, a very tricky position. Black has no counterplay, and maybe this would have been impossible to defend. Whereas this sudden activization, which looks almost like a suicidal attack, on the other hand, provided black with sufficient counterplay for an easy draw. So once again, it is not always necessary to defend passively. If you can activate all your pieces, look for counterplay. Also in endgames with very few pieces, like you see, the kind of possibility to activate all your pieces and to attack the opponent's king can be very successful, like in this case bringing the draw in a position which otherwise looked very difficult and unpleasant.